Hi there, and welcome back to the Smart English Coach podcast. I'm Claire, and in this episode, I want to talk about emotions and how they can help you learn English. So, when you first started learning English at school, it was all about learning grammar and vocabulary, and it was all about passing exams and tests. But after school, what makes you a successful English learner is not about learning rules. It's about your emotions. It's about how you feel about learning English, your emotional attitude, if you like. So, a very simple example of this is that if you feel scared about using new English, then you just won't use it. And that means you don't really make progress. However, if you are more brave, if you have more courage, and you decide that you're going to try something new, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable, then that's something that's going to help you learn English. So, in this episode, I've got three emotions for you, which I think are really helpful when you want to learn English. And although there's been a lot of research into emotions, I have based this episode on what I see my students doing and also on the emotions that I feel when I'm learning a new language. So let's get started. Emotion number one is to be curious. So we can look at curiosity in different ways. It could be that when you read some English, you get curious about the vocabulary that's been used. Why did the writer choose this word and not another word? Or you might think, well, I'm going to learn a little bit more about this vocabulary, and you look it up and you find out what the synonym is or what the opposite is. You find out how that word is used with another word, so the collocations, for example, or you could get curious about the grammar of the sentence. Why did the writer choose an active form rather than a passive form, for example? So that's one way of looking at curiosity. A second way of looking at curiosity is deciding you're going to try something new. So it could be that you only ever do the same sorts of exercises when you learn English, and you get a little bit stuck in a rut, as we say. So when you're stuck in a rut, it means that you just do the same thing and you don't really make progress. So you could try new activities. Now, I'm not saying that everything that you do always has to be new, but new activities can help to shake up your learning. For example, if you only ever read news articles, which obviously are great for learning vocabulary, try different sorts of reading. Perhaps you start to read a short story, some fiction, or you read poetry, or you read the sports news. But trying a different reading activity is really good for shaking things up. Or when it comes to listening, maybe you only ever listen to one singer or one group. And although that's fine, maybe you could try different types of music. Or when you watch things on YouTube, there's so much out there. So you can get really curious, explore all the documentaries or all the short films or all the tutorials, learn a new skill or a new hobby. YouTube is great for that. But I think maybe the best thing about curiosity is that it replaces fear. So get curious. What would happen if you, and you fill in that blank, if you started a conversation with someone that you don't know, if you used a new word in a sentence? The idea here isn't that you are going to be automatically successful, but that you try something new to see what would happen. And this leads me on to emotion number two, which is courage. So I'm going to get a little bit personal here and tell you something about me. In my teaching business, I can think of two examples where I decided that although I felt uncomfortable doing it, I was going to try something new. And both of those examples for me were really successful. So, one example was when I invited other teachers to help me create the Advanced English Summit. And another example, a little bit further back, is when I decided I would create the Fluency Club. And back then, and we're going back a few years now, nobody was doing this sort of thing. But both of these examples for me were really, really successful. Of course, they made me uncomfortable. So I could try something new like the Fluency Club and it would be a failure and I would feel sort of a little bit unhappy about that. Or I could ask people to join me in the summit and they could refuse, and then I would feel humiliated. But my point is this: when you try new things in English, when you have the courage to try new things, these are often the things that will help you grow and develop as an English learner. Two things that I've seen my students do recently. The first one is to record themselves speaking. Now, this might not be a huge thing. You don't need a lot of courage to do this, but it can make you feel uncomfortable at first because when you record your voice, it sounds different to how you think you sound when you speak. So you listen to your recording and you think, oh, that doesn't sound like me at all. I don't want to do it. It's embarrassing. I'm not going to do it again. But when you keep going at it, it is a fantastic resource for learning English. And the second example of being courageous, of having courage, is to invest in your English. Now, this is somewhere where I also have a little bit of personal experience. It takes me a long time to feel comfortable enough with a business coach to actually start investing with them. And it's the same with investing in an English teacher. It might take you quite a long time to feel comfortable enough in that teacher to actually want to invest with them. But often when you do, the results are amazing. It's fantastic to have someone who can tell you exactly where you can make progress, exactly what to do so that you start to achieve your aims in English. And the third emotion is determination. When we think about competitive sports people and when we see them win a race or win a match, we are only seeing a tiny fraction of all the work that has gone in. So it's the same thing when you see a successful English speaker. You're only seeing a tiny fraction of all the work that has gone in before this moment of successful speaking. So obviously with learning English, you will make mistakes. There will be failures. There will be disappointments. But when you have determination, when you are determined to succeed in your English, this is what keeps you going day after day, week after week. So determination is when you have this long-term view and when you know what you want to achieve, and then you keep going even when you make mistakes. Now, there are a couple of ways of thinking about mistakes. On the one hand, when you make a mistake and something doesn't go to plan, then it's what we call a learning opportunity. So, for example, you take an exam and you don't pass a part of that exam, you know what to focus on for the next time. Or you give a presentation and you don't think it goes very well. So then you ask someone for help or you focus on that area of the presentation so that next time you know that you can do it better. But the other thing about determination is knowing that even when you have a bad day with English, that doesn't define you. So everybody has bad days in English, But when you are determined, you know that tomorrow might not be a bad day. And it's understanding that your mistakes don't define you, that you will have better days. But the important thing, obviously, is that you have to keep going. For me, determination is the difference between someone who stops learning English and therefore never makes progress, and someone who keeps going past the mistakes until they find their success. And success is really personal. So success can be getting a better job or passing an exam, but it can also mean different things. It could mean being able to have a conversation where you feel confident. It can be having a conversation with someone that you don't know, which I think is also a pretty courageous thing. It could be being able to understand a film or a joke in English. So, to sum up, the three top emotions for me for learning English are to be curious, to have courage, and to be determined. And I would love to hear about your experiences. When have you used these three emotions for your English? Let me know in the comments or get in touch by email. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that you never miss another episode. That's all for now, and we'll speak soon.